We're up to the second paragraph in Eis Yud Gimel. After explaining what is the Padah BeShalom, what's the level of Elikos that's being nimshach, so the Maimer is going back to address the questions in the beginning of the Maimer, that from that Chazal say on the Pasuk Padah BeShalom Nafshi, Kol ha'esek b'teira v'gemilas chasadim u'mispalel l'matzibur Maila alav hakasav kilo padani liya lebana mibeinu meisa'ilam, that the Padah BeShalom Api Chazal refers to someone who learns Torah and he's Eisek b'gemilas chasadim and tefillah b'tzibur. So the Maimer said must be that has a connection also with the Teichen, with the idea of Pichsidis of Padah BeShalom. But that's what the Rebbe is explaining now. V'nei p'diyazu, this Padah BeShalom that we explained, what does it mean that there's no remnant of any opponent because everything is transformed to Elikos? Hu al yidei, what brings it about? Al yidei ha'aveda shal Eisek ha'teira gemilas chasadim u'tefillah b'tzibur. The Inyan ha'esek b'teira says, what type of learning Torah brings about this level of Padah BeShalom that you don't see anything else, everything is Elikos, hu pnimis ha'teira. This refers specifically to learning pnimis ha'teira. Shehi bechinas eitz ha'chayim. The pnimis ha'teira is eitz ha'chayim. Eitz ha'chayim represents the level of Elikos that's completely higher than Elameis, that over there isn't any opponent, there isn't anything else. V'loi kenigla de Torah shenislabsha be'etz hadas tevara. It's not like nigla de Torah is called the eitz hadas tevara. It's melubish in Gashmis. It speaks about dvarim Gashmim. It speaks about worldly matters and says what the halacha should be about them. So there's a certain amount of islapshus. Pnimius HaTorah is completely higher than the world. Therefore, Pnimius HaTorah, what does that show on? What does that tell us? Hainu sha'birur shal yidei Pnimius HaTorah, the birur through Pnimius HaTorah, who shaloi b'derech milchama klal, has no element of milchama at all, is the true shalom.
Could I say that knowing Pnimius Torah has a great connection to me, because when I do a mitzvah, I have now a concept that I'm not just doing a simple shake of rule of Nesrag or throwing a penny in a box. I'm causing all kinds of entities happening above. Therefore, there's an actual connection to me, not only to my mental state, but the way I'm going to do it. So it's not just a dream.
Right. So that's for sure one of the fringe benefits. That your perspective, your broader perspective of what the result of your mitzvah is, enhances your kiyum mitzvah. What we're talking about is something much deeper. That Pnimius HaTorah, in every level, its ideas, it's accessing and connecting you with the level of godliness that's completely above the world. In the person, it accesses the level of the neshama that's completely higher than his ishtalshalos. And therefore, that reveals the complete, essential, inherent connection with godliness.
Are you talking higher than the Kesser?
Well, not higher than Kesser, but the very pnimius of Kesser. There was 3 levels we said in the Maimer. And then he says, illustrating the difference between Pnimius HaTorah and Nigla HaTorah, Pnimius HaTorah is Shalei b'derech Melchama Klal, Gam loy ki yitzias hamelech v'alichasi l'makim ayev. He said, the Arin, in general, is an inyan of Shalom. It's Gili Elikos. But there was a difference between the Arin of the Mishkan and the Arin of the Beis HaMikdash. The Arin of the Mishkan didn't have to fight with the snakes and scorpions in the Midbar, but it had to go to where they are. And through going there, it caused them to be Nizbar. So therefore there was an element of Milchama. The Arin of the Beis HaMikdash is Kuma Havayil Nuchasecha. It didn't have to go to the place of the enemy. That's a true Shalom. Similarly, Nigla de Torah, the fact that it has to speak about Gashmias, the fact that it has to speak about Tevara, is an element of Milchama. And that causes their birur. Pnimius HaTorah doesn't have to speak about Gashmias, that's the true Shalom. And therefore the Eisek B'Torah that brings about the Padah BeShalom mainly is the Eisek in Pnimius HaTorah. Therefore, specifically, mainly through the Eisek and Pnimius HaTorah, that the Pnimius HaTorah is the true Shalom. Nasa haPedah BeShalom, that brings about the true Pedah BeShalom, shemizbatel mitzias ha'ev, that there isn't any more an existence of an opponent. V'cheinu b'gmilas chasadim, the Gemara says there's three things: Torah, gmilas chasadim, and tefillah b'tzibur. This is true about gmilas chasadim also. Shemamshicha mepnimius hakeser, that gmilas chasadim also has the power to draw down from pnimius hakeser. That pnimius hakeser causes shalim. It causes that there isn't any other existence, and it brings it down v'ad l'bchinas malchus, the malchus, to the lowest level of malchus, and therefore that affects even the mitzias of gashmis, like we said earlier in the Maimer. V'cheinu gam b'tefillah b'tzibur, this maila of shalom is there also by tefillah b'tzibur. So the Rebbe is now going to give like an equation. Where do we see that tefillah b'tzibur should have this advantage of shalom, should have this kayach of bringing down pnimis hakeser? It's based on a Gemara. Shetfilu b'tzibur hu kamayat tefillah daser simei tshuva uchamayim razal ala pasuk dirshu avayim b'matzei kan liyachid kan l'tzibur. He says tefillah. It says in the Gemara has a question. We say dirshu havayim b'himatzei, search for the Eibishter when he's available, when he's accessible, and it says b'chol kareinu elav, whenever you call him, he's there. Are you limited to his b'himatzei, to his being found to you, or is he, could you call him at any time? So the Gemara says, kan b'yachid, kan b'tzibur. A yachid has to call him dafka b'himatzei, which is aser simei tshuva. A tzibur could call him any time. So from this we're deriving that the davening b'tzibur has the same maila as davening in aser simei tshuva. Aser simei tshuva is b'yachid, is the idea of bringing down from pnimis hakeser. So therefore comes out of tefillah b'tzibur hu hamshachas pnimis hakeser, that also tefillah b'tzibur is the idea of being mamshach from pnimis hakeser, which is Padah BeShalom. So therefore these three avedas, Torah, gemilas chasadim, and tefillah b'tzibur bring about the pnimis haTorah, bring about the Padah BeShalom.
Talk at the beginning about b'tzibur, davening, that's also melchama or not melchama, or both.
What? If tefillah in general, avedas at tefillah, yeah. So he said it has both sides, yeah. But here we're talking about not mitzvah avedas at tefillah. Therefore, he says the shalom is the result of tefillah. That we compare it to aser simei tshuva. That means tefillah acts as pnimis hakeser, and bringing down from pnimis hakeser is a bir b'derech shalom.
Tefillah acts as a
Pnimis hakeser, the highest level of elikos. We said it earlier in the Maimer. That is the etzem of elikos, the essence of the Eibishter.
That's what the tefillahs are going?
That's what tefillah b'tzibur does. That's what they're bringing down. They're not going. That's what's coming to us. So this still here in the Maimer, we explained what the meaning of the pasuk Padah BeShalom is, based on Yeducha Avayun. And this explains the connection between this and Yutas Kislev. To the Gula of the Alter Rebbe, Shinyanu, who hafatzas hamayanis chutza. The Inyan of Yutas Kislev was then started, the real spreading of Chassidus, the Inyan hafatzas hamayanis chutza, who what is spreading the Mayanis themselves to Chutza? Shegam bebchinas Malchus shebemalchus kemei shehi bebchinas Chutza. To bring down into Malchus shebemalchus. Malchus shebemalchus, like we said, is the level of Malchus that's not still retaining its connection with Atzilus, but that's going down to become the Kayach HaPeil B'nifal, the force that's sustaining the world. That's the ultimate Chutza, the way Elikos goes down into every single created being in the world. That even in Malchus Shebemalchus, the way it is in Chutza, Yumshach L'Sham HaMayanis should come there, Hafatzas HaMayanis. There should come the Mayanis, the well itself. That you bring there not just the water that came from the well, which would represent the various levels of Elikos, Ela hamayanis atzmam, the very essence, which is hamshachas pnimius hakeser mayanis lebchinas malchus shebemalchus chulu chutza. V'zeu shal yidei hafatzas hamayanis chutza ye'asi mar dam malka mashicha. And that's the reason why Hafatz Hamayanis Chutza brings about the coming of Mashiach Kigeres HaKedesh HaYeduah de Baal Shem Tov. Like the famous letter that's what Mashiach answered to the Baal Shem Tov. Hafatz Hamayanis Chutza V'inyanam Shachas Pnimius HaKeser L'Bchinas Malchus Shebemalchus. Because what is Hafatz Hamayanis Chutza? What are you doing? You're taking the Maya and the Etzem to Chutza. And that is what the Gili of Mashiach is. V'ukamay ha'isek b'teira gemilas chasadim maspal l'matzibur, sha'ideza padani liya l'bani mibein ha'umes. So therefore, it's not stam, it's a promise, a skula. Hafatz ha'mayanis chutza is the same thing that brings about the gula. Asher aziyah v'esruach hatuma aver min haaretz v'aya havaya l'melech ha'kol haaretz b'yim ha'uyeh havaya echad ha'shmei echad, that the coming of Mashiach is the ultimate Padah BeShalom, that there's no ruach hatuma, there's no opponent. The Maimer was a long Maimer. It doesn't end here, because there's some questions in the beginning of the Maimer that weren't answered in the Maimer. Specifically, the Rebbe asked why is Kol Ha'esek b'teira gemilas chasadim mispal l'matzibur. Teira and gemilas chasadim, Rashi said, are learned from the word shalom. Tefillah b'tzibur is from the word berab mahayu imadi. Why are they separated into two categories? And the Rebbe asked, why does it speak about ha'esek, about the person, not about the teira gemilas chasadim and tefillah atzma? So in the Farbrengen, Parshas Vayeshev, that year, Tavshin Chavav, after the Maimer, so the Rebbe addressed the unanswered questions, and then he was Magia the Sicha, which is printed in the Sefer HaMamorim afterwards. And then Chanukah is a Maimer, L'havin in Yeneris Chanukah, a whole Maimer, that's a hemshich to this Maimer, that goes further into the Yeducha Vaya Kol Masecha. But so the Maimer was a long Maimer, some parts were a little bit difficult, but the truth is it's a very, very easy Maimer in a sense, that the structure is very clear. It builds up step by step by step, and then it's easy, if we follow it, to see how it brings us to the conclusion. So I'm going to try to just go over the steps of the Maimer. Then if we have time, I'll say the teichen of that Sicha, of in Yeducha Vaya Kol Masecha. The beginning of the Maimer was the questions in the Pasuk Padah BeShalom Nafshi, but the whole essence of the main part of the Maimer explained it through explaining the Pasuk Yeducha Vaya Kol Masecha v'chasidecha Yivarechucha. So the Maimer explained that Yeducha Havaya Kol Masecha, that it says in Zayar v'chasidecha Yivarechucha, that the Chasidim are being mamshech Yivarchu Bracha as Amshacha Elikus into Kai into Malchus. They're drawing down Elikus into Malchus. What level of Elikus? It says in the beginning of the Pasuk Yeducha Havaya Kol Masecha, a level of Elikus that's higher than Ishtalshalus, and all that there is Haidah. There's no understanding. Any level of Ishtalshalus, because it has some connection with the level after it, it's a chain, it's a gradual continuation, so therefore even the highest level, you have some understanding, because you understand it from the level after it, So the highest level of Atzilus has some erech to the lowest level of Atzilus. Yeducha, the place where there's only Haidah, is higher than Ishtalshalus. So what the Chassidim are doing is they're bringing down from higher than Ishtalshalus into Malchus. Yeducha vaya kol masecha v'chasidecha yivarechucha. More than that, says, in what eifin are they bringing it down into Malchus? Yivarechucha, in a way of a bracha. To appreciate this, so the first step of the Maimer was, we have to understand the difference between bracha and tefillah in general. A bracha is bringing down something that's there already. It's a hamshacha. Someone who has the koyach to bring down, brings down something from its sheresh that maybe had some obstacles and didn't come into the world. So the true meaning of a bracha going to a tzaddik is, you're not getting those things that you're supposed to get, because there's some difficulties en route. The tzaddik brings it down to you. He has to be on a high level to do that, and that's why it says, "Abrach is nesunis biyadcha." The Eibush said, Avraham Avinu is all the way up there. He could bring these down. Tefillah is not drawing down; it's asking. Abracha is b'derech tzivui. Tefillah is asking. On the other hand, tefillah reaches even higher than bracha. Could give something that's even not there b'sheresh. Even if you're not meant to get something, kilu, tefillah could bring a ratzin chadish, like we say in davening, Yehi ratzin. And the reason the Maimer said b'derech hagav, kol l'maisi adecha tichseif, avedas ha'adam reaches even higher. So tefillah reaches higher than ishtalshlus, but it's not certain that it's going to happen. Bracha takes only something that's there in your hishtalshlus, in your sheresh, but it's with a certainty, it's b'derech tzivui. This pasuk that says Yeducha Havaya, it's coming from higher than ishtalshlus, so you could get something new that wasn't there b'sheresh. But the way the hamshach is happening is Yivarechucha, in a way of a bracha b'derech tzivui, is putting together both milas. That's a very great hamshacha. It's hamshacha b'derech tzivui from higher than ishtalshlus. That was the first step, or the first two steps. Said the Maimer, what's an example of this? The first example that didn't come up so much in the Hemshech of the Maimer is brachas of tzaddikim, literally brachas of tzaddikim, like by Avraham is a bracha. But he brought the Yerushalmi, you go to a Rebbe could give a bracha, b'derech bracha, on something that you weren't meant to get. The Rebbe brought this from the Yerushalmi, v'atigzer eimer v'yakim lach, afilu hu eimer kacha, even if the Eibishter Kavayachal said one thing, the tzaddik said otherwise, the tzaddik is going to draw down otherwise, b'derech bracha. An example of a bracha that's bringing a new hamshacha, but it's b'derech tzivui, not as a request. The other example, in Chassidus of the putting together bracha and tefillah, is Torah. Torah has both advantages together. That Torah could bring down a hamshacha in the world, even that wasn't meant to be, but it's not as a request, it's with a certainty, it's b'derech tzivui, it forces it. And the Maimer, that this Maimer is based on, the Maimer of the Rebbe Rashab, brought the example that's often brought in Chassidus from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that he brought about Geshamim, he caused it to rain through saying Adrush, through saying Torah. So he forced it to rain, even though it wasn't supposed to rain. There was a drought, there was a hell and v'hester, it wasn't even b'sherish. So it has both advantages. So that's brought by the Rebbe Rashab as an example of what is the big maila in this pasuk, Yeducha Havaya v'chasidecha Yivarachucha. The Rebbe asked on this, why does he bring the example from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? L'cheira, there's many examples in Gemara of Amirayim who accomplished mifsim through Torah, which is always the same thing. And the standard example that's always brought in Chassidus, that the Rebbe brought in this Maimer, is Rav Pinchas ben Yair split the river through the Keach HaTorah when he was going to do Pidyon. And you see that splitting the river was a change from the sherish of the river, the sar of the river. The river was trying to oppose it. So the final answer to this had many steps in between. The Rebbe said must be because there's an advantage in Rab Shimon Bar Yochai over all the other Tanaim. What is the advantage? That the other Amiram had to give a specific instruction of what the Rab Pinchas ben Yair told the river to split. Rab Shimon Bar Yochai just said Torah, and it caused it to rain. The Torah didn't speak about rain. But why is that a maila? To get to what understanding and appreciating why that's a maila, we have to go through the steps in between. So we understand what Yiducha Havaya Kol Masecha V'Chasidecha Yivarchucha is. The example is from Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. Why is the example from Rab Shimon Bar Yochai? So first we're going to have to explain why is it Chasidecha who do this. So the Rebbe brought the Rambam. That the Rambam says the difference between tzedakah and chesed. That tzedakah is yesher. Tzedakah is what's deserved, what's right, what's just, what's proper. And chesed is doing haflogas hatayv, a great, strong, intense good that's even more than what's deserved. So in Beruchnius, tzedakah is to draw down into Malchus what Malchus deserves. What does Malchus deserve? He brought it says, Ata sisas hashamayim v'saretz shmei hashamayim. Ata says without a hey, that when Malchus came down to create the Elameth, it had to forfeit 5 different levels. Keser, Chachma, Bina, Zah, and Malchus. And all that's left is the Chitzenius of Malchus. It doesn't have all the 5 levels that are there in each Elam. The way they are in Atzilus were lost to Malchus in the course of coming down into Biyah. To replace and replenish these 5 levels, these 5 partsufim, the way he called it in the Maimer, that's tzedakah. That's giving Malchus what's rightfully hers. So therefore you're not giving something extra. What's chasidecha? What's haflagas hatayv? To give Malchus something that's above and beyond that, something that's higher than ishtalshalos, something that's higher than the 5 levels. What's higher than the 5 levels? The first level was Keser, something that's higher than Keser. So to explain this, so he said, he brought down further from the Maimer, what the Rebbe Rashab says to explain this. He says to explain what is this Chasidech, what's this level that you're giving Malchus. It says that Chesed is Bein La'ani and Bein La'ashirim. The difference between tzedakah and Chesed is that tzedakah is only Taniyim, and Chesed is even to Ashirim. Said the Maimer. This tells us now what is really Chesed. What is Chasidecha doing? It It's not just they're giving Malchus something that's not rightfully to Malchus. It's something that's higher than Ashirus, right? And the Rebbe explained, what does that mean it's higher than Ashirus? What forces us to say it's higher than Ashirus? Anything that can be defined as wealth, if the wealthy man is lacking it, that's a void. So giving him to that's part of tzedakah. It's giving him something. Can't be called that he's not missing. He's not an usher if he doesn't have it, because a wealthy man is able to have that. What could you be giving something to a wealthy man that he was wealthy even before is something that's completely above and beyond the whole concept of wealth. So therefore, chesed is giving something that's l'mayla from ashirus, completely higher than ashirus. So to understand what chasidech are being mamshech, so in general we saw it's higher than keser, it's something that's higher than ashirus. So comes therefore the next step in the mimer, to appreciate what are chasidech are being mamshech, we have to understand what ashirus is. What's ashirus? What's wealth? He brought down, when was the greatest state of wealth by Yidden? By Shleima Melech. That's described, was Kaima Sira Bashlemusa. The moon, which represents Yidden, in Yisrael, Nimshul Levana Menim, was at its state of Shleimus, and that reflected the fact that Yidden were in the state of the greatest wealth. Begashmias and Beruchnias. Begashmias, like it says, Ein Kesef Nechshav L'Klum, that there was no value to precious metals. And Beruchnias, that was the Beis Hamikdash, Bimei Shlema. That this was the greatest wealth, and this wealth was the inyan of the Shalom that was by Shleima Melech, that the Beis Hamikdash had to be built by Shleima Melech, because he was a Ish Shalom. The Shalom was this wealth, Begashmis Beruchnias. So to understand the wealth Beruchnias, the Rebbe said, the main wealth of Shleima Melech was manifested in the Beis Hamikdash. But it was in general, his reign was a reign of Shalom, because the reason why the Beis Hamikdash could be built by Shlomo and not by David was because Huiyah is Shalom. We see it was general, but mainly if we want to understand the meaning of wealth, we know the wealth came out in the Beis Hamikdash. So the Rebbe brought a very gishmaka beer from the Maimer, that there's two Arins, there was the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. We say Shalom was by the Beis Hamikdash, by Shlomo HaMelech mainly, because there was a difference. It was the Mishkan wasn't the ultimate Shalom. And he brought from Chazal, that Chazal say there was two kumas. There was the kuma of Meish Rabbeinu, kuma avaya v'yanusu evecha v'yafutzu evecha v'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha. The kuma of David was kuma avaya l'mnuchasecha. The kuma of Moshe was a kuma that he asked for there be a Gilead Lekos that still sees an existence of enemies. They're scattered. That means there's enemies. It means it's not the ultimate shalom. The kuma of Moshe Rabbeinu was kuma avaya l'mnuchasecha. The Gilead of the Beis Hamikdash was the ultimate shalom. Where do we see it? We see it in the fact that the Arin had to go into the Midbar, and the Beis Hamikdash had to stay b'mkoimei. To have to go to the Midbar means that the level of Elikus is one that sees, that recognizes the existence of an enemy. So that's not a true shalom, that there isn't anything else besides the Gili Elikus. In the Beis Hamikdash is a Gili that doesn't recognize the Mitzias of the enemy. The Mitzias came to Shlomo HaMelech. The sparks came to Shlomo HaMelech. He didn't have to go to them. That means he's completely higher than them. Said the Rebbe, based on this understanding of the difference between the two shaloms, now let's understand it deeper then. Even a birur that comes from staying in one place, if it's a level of elikus, that next to that level there is an acknowledgement of an opponent, so then it's not a true shalom. That level can't be mevarer in a way that completely causes them not to exist. What level could be this shalom? Had to be because the Beis Hamikdash was a level that's completely higher than Ishtalshlus. So this is the Ashirus. What's Ashirus? Has to be something that's completely higher than Ishtalshlus. What in labels? What's completely higher than Ishtalshlus? Chitzeni is Keser, which is Arich, is the first root, the first source. Just like by a person, I want something, that starts the whole chain reaction of whatever I do. Chitzeni Sakeser starts the whole chain reaction of Ishtalshus. Therefore, it has some connection with Ishtalshus. What level could be Kuma Avayilim Nuchasecha? which comes out in the fact that it stays in its place, but it has to be a level also that's in its place, that's completely removed from the shtalshlus, is atik, pnimis hakeser. So we said again, so that's just the short form that the Ashiras, what's the definition of this wealth by Shleima Malach, that then was the Beis HaMikdash, was the Gili of Atik, of Pnimis HaKeser, that's completely removed from Ishtalshlos. That's why it was Kuma Havaya L'Mnuchasecha. That's why it didn't have to go to the enemy, they came to it, because it's completely higher than Ishtalshlos. Now coming back to our reasoning from before, what's Chesed? Chesed I give to someone who's already wealthy. That means I'm providing something that's completely higher than wealth. So Shleima wasn't the ultimate Shalom, because it was Ashirus, but it's Atik. There's something that Chasidecha has to be more than that. What's Chasidecha is Ein Seif Shebiradla, is the Pnimius of Atik. That's completely higher than Atik. That you could give even to someone who was an usher and who was a true usher, truly wealthy, wasn't lacking anything in his wealth, but there's something higher than that, Ein Seif Shebiradla. And that's why Shlomo, he said, is called Ish Shalom. He wasn't really lacking anything, because in the Giluyim, in the manifestations of Elikus, that's the highest there is Atik. But then there's Primius Atik, that's the Etzem of the Eibishter. And that's the Gili of La'asid Lavei. And this is the Chasidecha Yivarechucha. Since it's Chasidecha, what they're being mamshech is, they're being mamshech from Ein Seif Shebrad La. And the Maimer concluded, the difference is not just, it's a higher level that's coming down. The difference is, where is it coming to? When the Hamshacha is from anything other than Ein Seif Shebrad La, you brought from Tikkunei Zayar, the terms, but what came out then, the Hamshacha is only to Malchus, the way it's connected with Yesod. It's only to Yesod. Malchus, the way it's part of Yesod, which means it's only to something that's a Keli to Gili Elikus. You're not taking the world itself, you're not taking the Cheshach itself and transforming it to Elikus. But when you're mamshech, Ein Seif Shebrad La, the essence of the Eibishter, that the essence of the Eibishter is the essence of everything, because that's what a Mitas Imatzai is. Mitas Imatzai Nimsu Kol Nimtzaim. So then everything, even Gashmis itself, the Nifal itself, it becomes revealed to be Elikus. That's the Hamshach of Chasidecha Yivarechucha. They're mamshech it into Malchus Shebemalchus. That's the Teichen of the. So he said that Maila. That's now come. That Maila, the comparison for that is Dafkas from Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. He says, when the other Amira made Meifsim, and the Meifis came like Rab Pinchas ben Yair, because they instructed the river or anything in the world, to having to command shows that there's two things. There's the commander and the one that's being commanded. You didn't reach yet that level that there was a gilui, a revelation of a mitas imatzai, where it's clear that there's no two separate entities because everything is elikus. Because if everything was elikus, there would be no need for a command. And therefore, the other moifsim of the Amiram can't be an illustration of this Hamshach of Ein Seif Shebrad La. And therefore, the example is Dafka from Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, that he didn't have to give at Sivui. Why? Because Pnimius Atera, Chassidus, the Gili of Pnimius Atera is Mamshech Ein Seif Shebrad La, that through that is revealed in the whole world how there's no two separate entities. Everything is Elikos. Kol Hanimsaim, what is their true existence? Amitas Imatzei, that's the existence of the Eibishter. And that's the Hamshach of Chasidecha Yivarechucha from Yiducha Havaya Kol Masecha. That's the synopsis of the Maimer. So the Maimer helps us to understand the Pasuk Yiducha Havaya Kol Masecha, but helps us to understand, like the Rabbi says briefly in the end of the Maimer, this is the connection with Yutas Kislev. That's the idea of Chassidus. That Chassidus is Primis Atera. The Gilui of Chassidus came through the Gilui of Ein Seif Shebrad La, of Primis Atik, and the Gilui of Chassidus is to be Megala in the world, to see and realize and appreciate that the essence of everything is Amitas Imatzeh. Therefore, there's no two entities. Everything is Be'etzem Elikus. What type of davening is now? Just one. So one. Then no time for one word from the Sikha. The Rabbi in the Sikha addresses the other two questions. When he speaks about the Isaac, why does it speak about the person? The Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe is Padah BeShalom. So that means, and Padah BeShalom, Chazal say, is connected with Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, Spal Matzibur. So for sure, Alter Rebbe himself in prison was involved in these three things. Teira, for sure, Alter Rebbe was learning Teira in prison. Gemilas Chasadim, how was the Alter Rebbe doing Gemilas Chasadim in prison? So the Rebbe brings the Gemara that when a person eats, he's doing Gemilas Chasadim with his guf. The Rebbe was doing that Gemilas Chasadim in prison. But what about Tefillah B'tzibur? How could he have Tefillah B'tzibur in prison? So, without the Sikha, you would say that we know the famous story the Rebbe said about his grandfather, that Tzibur is the 10 Keches and Nefesh. The Rebbe over here brings note that when there's a person who's Rabbim Tzrichim Lei, that there's someone who's needed by the Tzibur, so his Tefillah, even though he's davening by himself, is called Tefillah B'tzibur. He's not an individual, he's a public person, so it's Tefillah B'tzibur. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe, in these three things, is Megala Yechida Shebenefesh. And so the Teichen of the beer, why does it speak about Kol HaEsek, the person who's doing these things, and not about the Teira, Veda Gmos, Chasadim, and Tefillah B'tzibur themselves, because the Yechida Shebenefesh is higher than the world. It's speaking about the way it reveals the Yechida Shebenefesh, and that's above and beyond the world.